All right, let's dive into the psychology behind negotiation, shall we? You ready for this?
Always.
Awesome. So we're looking at this article called The Art of the Deal. Is negotiation just a battle of psychology? And it makes you think, right? Like, we always think of negotiation as this super logical thing back and forth.
Yeah.
But this article says it's way more about psychology and, the hidden forces that are influencing our decisions.
It's true.
Have you ever felt like someone was, like, reading your mind when you were at the bargaining table?
Yeah, probably. Definitely.
Well, we're about to expose some of those secrets today, so
I love it.
get ready.
Buckle up.
Okay, so the article starts off strong, talking about something called anchoring bias. And it uses a really interesting example of, like, haggling for a vintage watch. Let's say the seller says, okay, this watch is $500. Even if you talk them down, that initial number, that $500, kind of sticks in your head, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's anchoring bias right there in action.
Right.
It's like it sets a reference point, like a mental anchor that then influences how we see the value of the watch.
Yeah.
So suddenly, like, $300 feels like a steal.
Yeah.
Even if it's, not worth that much.
Totally. So it's like the seller is setting the playing field in a way.
Yeah.
And we're playing on their terms without even really realizing it.
Exactly.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
So, like, think about this the next time you see a sale price.
Yeah.
Is it really a deal, or are you just anchored to that bigger, like, inflated original price?
Right.
This is especially important, like, when we think about big negotiations.
Huge, especially in salary negotiation.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. You don't want that initial offer from a potential employer to, like, totally dictate your counteroffer. Knowing about anchoring bias can really help you avoid overpaying, not just for, products, but for services and even in those big career moments.
Yeah. It's like having the, like, secret weapon against those sneaky retail tactics.
Yeah.
Okay, now, the article also dives into framing.
Yes.
This one really blew my mind. They use this example of meat that's labeled 90% lean versus 10% fat.
Right.
Same thing.
Different product. Yeah.
But the way it's presented totally changes how we see it.
It does. It's a classic example of, like, positive versus negative framing. And it really plays into what's called prospect theory, which basically says, as humans, we're more sensitive to the pain of a loss than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Oh, loss aversion. That's a new one for me. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. So imagine, like, losing a $10 bill.
Ugh, yeah.
Feels pretty bad, right?
The worst.
Yeah, it's awful. Now imagine finding a $10 bill. Feels good.
Yeah.
But maybe not as good as the pain you felt losing it.
Yeah.
That's loss aversion.
Wow. That's what you mean. Yeah. Okay. So how does this all apply to negotiation?
Well, when you're negotiating, framing your proposition in terms of potential gains is going to be way more persuasive than dwelling on potential losses.
Oh, interesting.
So, for example, instead of telling someone, hey, you're going to lose money if you don't take this deal, emphasize how much they'll gain if they do.
Oh, I see. So it's about highlighting the positive rather than the negative consequences. Yeah. That's brilliant. Okay, next up we have the illusion of control. Now, this one feels kind of sneaky to me.
It can be, and it's used all the time. Like, remember that classic car salesperson tactic?
Oh, yeah.
Red or blue?
Uh-huh.
Seems like a simple question, a simple choice, but it's totally limiting our options.
It is. We're so busy thinking about what color we want that we forget to think about if we even want the car.
Exactly.
Oh, man, I've fallen for that one.
Yeah, I think we all have at some point.
Yeah.
The key is to recognize when someone's doing that. Like,
Right.
when they're presenting you with a limited set of choices, take a step back. Ask yourself, are there other options that I haven't considered? Like, maybe I don't want the car at all.
Yeah.
Don't let someone else dictate the terms of the negotiation.
Such a good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get so, like, caught up in the back and forth
Yeah.
that we forget to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this next section of the article really surprised me. I always thought, like, good negotiators were supposed to keep their emotions in check,
Right.
like, be totally neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But this article says it's more about understanding and managing those emotions.
Yeah.
Both ours and the other person's.
Absolutely. Ignoring them completely is almost impossible.
Right.
Because they're always there, like, simmering beneath the surface. The key is not to let them control you, but to use them strategically.
So it's about, like, emotional intelligence.
Yes, exactly. And a big part of that is, like, learning to read the other person's emotions, right? Mm-hmm.
Are they anxious? Are they confident? Are they frustrated?
Yeah.
And once you understand their emotional state, you can then, kind of adjust your approach accordingly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the article mentions this technique called mirroring, which to me kind of sounds like mind control.
Yeah. I mean, it's not quite mind control, but it can be a really powerful way to build rapport.
Okay.
You know, it involves like subtly matching someone's body language or their speech patterns, and it creates this unconscious sense of connection. So it can, make them more receptive to your ideas.
Okay, but isn't there a fine line there between building rapport and just being like straight up manipulative? Like, I don't want to come across as like phony or insincere.
Oh, no, for sure. It's all about being subtle and authentic. It's not about mimicking someone's every move, but more about finding a natural rhythm in the conversation. The goal isn't to trick anyone, but to just create that sense of trust and understanding.
So it's like finding that common ground, a shared energy.
Exactly. This is getting really interesting. Okay, let's talk about power dynamics. This section uses the example of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, wow.
High stakes.
High stakes, yeah. So that was a negotiation where the perceived power of each side was just as important as their actual military capabilities.
Yeah.
Right? So both the U.S. and the Soviet Union had to project an image of strength, even though, behind the scenes, both sides were trying to avoid a nuclear war.
Right. So it wasn't just about who had the bigger weapons, but who appeared more confident and in control.
Exactly. And research has actually shown that even believing you have power can actually change the outcome of a negotiation. People who feel powerful, they tend to negotiate more assertively, which can lead to, more concessions from the other side.
So confidence is key. But how do you cultivate that confidence, especially if you're going up against someone who just seems like way more experienced or powerful than you?
That's a great question. And it leads us perfectly into the next section of the article, which is the importance of preparation. Preparation. Oh, it is so important. It's like the foundation of successful negotiation. Think of it this way. You wouldn't walk into a big exam without studying first, right?
Oh, no way. Not a chance.
Right. So when it comes to negotiation, it's like, what kind of studying should we be doing?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. What's the equivalent of hitting the books for a big negotiation?
Well, it's more than just like gathering information, It's really about understanding the other person's, their perspective, like what are their motivations, what are they afraid of, what are their goals. The more you know about the person you're negotiating with, the better prepared you'll be to actually find a solution that works for both of you.
So it's like detective work almost.
Yes.
Like you're gathering clues, piecing together this profile of the other person before you even sit down at the table.
Exactly. It's not just about the facts and figures. It's about understanding that human element.
Yeah, totally.
And a really key part of that preparation is understanding your own position too, right?
Oh, okay.
So the article talks about something called BATNA, which stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement.
Okay, BATNA. Break that down for me. Sounds kind of intimidating.
It's really simple, actually. It's about knowing your options if this negotiation falls through. Like, what's your fallback plan? What's your walkaway point? Having a strong BTNA, that gives you leverage because then you're not desperate to make a deal, at any cost.
Right.
And that makes you a more confident and therefore effective negotiator.
So it's like having an ace up your sleeve.
Yes.
It gives you the confidence to walk away if the deal isn't right. I never thought about it that way.
It's huge. Knowing your BATNA, it allows you to negotiate from a position of strength. It takes the pressure off so you can be more objective and strategic in your approach.
It's funny because, as we're talking about this, it's making me realize, like, even small negotiations, deciding where to go to dinner with a friend.
Totally.
All this psychology is at play.
It is all the time.
Yeah. We don't even realize it. So, like, let's say you really want Italian food, but your friend is really craving sushi. How do you navigate that using, like, some of these principles?
Well, you could try, like, framing it in a way that appeals to your friend's interests. Like, maybe you find an Italian place that has a really great steak selection.
Oh, okay.
Or you suggest trying a new fusion restaurant, like, where they combine both.
I like that.
Or maybe you propose, a trade-off, like Italian tonight, sushi next week.
So it's about finding that win-win.
Yes.
Where everyone feels heard and, like, their preferences are considered. It's not about one person always getting their way, but, that compromise.
Exactly. And, good negotiators are not only skilled at using these techniques on others, but they're also highly self-aware.
Right. So how do we become more self-aware in our own negotiations?
It starts by paying attention to your own reactions. Like what triggers you? What makes you feel defensive? or resistant. And once you identify those triggers, then you can start to, manage them more effectively.
So instead of letting my emotions like hijack the negotiation, I can learn to recognize them like as they're happening and use that to my advantage.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
And one really helpful strategy is to try to reframe your thinking. If you feel yourself getting defensive, try to see the situation from the other person's perspective. Like, why are they taking this position? What are their underlying needs? What are their interests?
Yeah, instead of viewing it as like a personal attack or like this competition, try to see where they're coming from.
Yes. It's a great way to kind of de-escalate the situation and just focus on finding a solution that works for everyone.
Okay, this is all making a lot of sense, but I have to admit, it can feel a little overwhelming. Like there's so much to think about, all these different tactics, strategies. It's a lot to process. Any advice on how to actually start applying these principles in our own lives?
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to master every technique overnight. Just start small. Pick one or two that really resonate with you and try incorporating them into your everyday interactions.
So like maybe I could focus on like active listening or framing my requests in a more positive way.
Exactly. And as you become more comfortable with those, you can gradually add more to your repertoire.
It's like building like a negotiation toolkit.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I like that. Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier. Body language.
Uh-huh.
The article mentioned that like nonverbal cues can be just as important as the words we use.
Absolutely. I mean, our posture, our eye contact, our tone of voice, all of those convey messages whether we realize it or not.
So how can we use like body language to our advantage?
Well, first and foremost, maintain good eye contact. It shows you're engaged and confident. Also, try to keep your posture open and relaxed. Avoid crossing your arms because that can make you seem defensive or resistant.
Right. What about mirroring? Is that something we should be doing consciously?
Well, you don't want to mimic someone's every move.
Right.
But subtly reflecting their body language can help you build rapport. It creates that sense of connection and understanding.
So if they lean forward, I should lean forward.
Subtly, yes. It's about like matching their energy level, creating a sense of harmony in the conversation. But remember, authenticity is key.
Right.
People can spot a phony from a mile away.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not about trying to be someone you're not.
Right.
It's about finding that natural rhythm, like we talked about.
Exactly. And the more you practice these techniques, the more natural they will become. It's like learning a new language, At first it feels awkward, unfamiliar. But with time and practice, it becomes second nature.
Yeah. I love that analogy. This whole conversation has been incredible. I feel like I'm already starting to see negotiation in a whole new light.
That's the power of knowledge. And remember, the learning doesn't stop here. Just keep exploring these ideas, keep practicing, and keep refining your skills. You'll be surprised what you can achieve.
I'm ready to take on the world one negotiation at a time.
That's the spirit.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been, really digging into the psychology of negotiation.
Yeah.
And I feel like my mind is like blown wide open with all this cool stuff we've been learning.
It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It is. It's like we've been given this like backstage pass to the human mind.
I like that.
Right. And speaking of getting behind the scenes, the article we've been talking about, it ends on this really interesting note. The negotiation, at its heart, is a reflection of like human nature itself.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. So like when you strip away all those tactics, all those strategies, what you're really left with is this kind of complex dance of like social instincts and cognitive biases.
Yeah.
And of course, emotions.
Absolutely. It's not just about being clever or outsmarting the other person.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into something deeper, something fundamentally human.
It's like that famous quote, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah, exactly. That's the essence of effective negotiation, right?
Yeah.
It's about truly putting yourself in the other person's shoes, seeing the world through their perspective, and finding those solutions that address their needs as well as your own.
This whole deep dive has been like such an eye-opener. I feel like I've got, this whole new toolkit to bring to any negotiation, big or small.
And you don't have to be a master negotiator
Yeah.
to really benefit from this, Just start small. Practice these techniques in your everyday life.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those subtle dynamics that are happening in your conversations. Right.
And you'll be amazed how much better you can navigate the world around you.
I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to those sale prices from now on.
Good.
No more falling for that anchoring bias for me.
And don't forget about the power of framing.
Oh, right.
Remember, people are way more motivated by what they stand to gain than what they might lose.
Yeah.
So focus on those positive outcomes,
Yeah.
and you'll be well on your way to being a much more persuasive negotiator.
This has been so insightful. I feel like, I've learned so much, not just about negotiation,
Right.
but like about people.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And to all our listeners out there,
Yep.
we encourage you to check out the full article, The Art of the Deal. Is negotiation just a battle of psychology? It's got even more fascinating insights and practical tips.
You might just discover your inner negotiation ninja.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Happy negotiating, everyone.
And keep diving deep.